Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a wonderful autumn day, wherever you are. And today, I'm going to talk about understanding and mutualism. From the book Old Path, White Cloud by Thich Nhat Hanh, he says, "We share common ground with all beings and things. Look deeply into the heart of anything, and it will reveal itself." Early in after seeing the morning star, he sat with many young children to begin his teachings. Gautama now saw that understanding and love are one. Without understanding, there can be no love. Each person's disposition is the result of physical, emotional, and social conditions. When we understand this, we cannot hate even a person who behaves cruelly, but we can strive to help transform his physical, emotional, and social conditions. Understanding gives rise to compassion and love, which in turn give rise to correct action. In order to love, it is first necessary to understand. So understanding is the key to liberation. In order to attain clear understanding, it is necessary to live mindfully, making direct contact with life in the present moment, truly seeing what is taking place within and outside of oneself. And in speaking to these children, he said, "Children, living in awareness means to live in the present moment. One is aware of what is taking place within oneself and in one's surrounding. If one continues to live in such a way, one will be able to deeply understand oneself and one's surroundings. Understanding leads to tolerance and love. When all beings understand one another, they will accept and love one another. Then there will not be so much suffering in the world." Our species on this planet is a microcosm of the universe. And ideally, it can mirror the natural laws, functions, and processes of this universe. So how do we mirror the natural laws of the universe? Many peoples, indigenous peoples, have found harmony in nature through mirroring what they observe and understand of their surroundings. In Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, all these find harmony on the path moment to moment through these understandings. Confucius expounds the five constants, or the five moralities, that of benevolence, righteousness, ritual, wisdom, and fidelity. And these have direct links into the precepts of Buddhism. I think there are some who say that Buddhism and Taoism came together and formed Zen, and yet Confucianism actually expresses in its pure form other ways of expressing the natural laws. One of the points in Confucianism is to understand our relationships, to understand our relationship and relationships is vital. To how we feel about all this is secondary. And usually it's primary for, I think, most Americans. How we feel if we don't like something, it's like it's not right. And yet to understand the relationship is really the primal, most vital aspect. In Confucianism too, they, instead of speaking of Buddha nature, they talk about the mandate of heaven. And for an emperor, the mandate of heaven results in peace and harmony, well-being in the community. Confucianism also expounds the need for each person to has the fundamental responsibility to understand their own mandate of heaven, which points maybe somewhere else than inside, and yet it reflects similarly to understanding our Buddha nature. Mutualism is a term that's new to me. I guess it's not real new to me, but in reading about the mother tree, the author writes about the mutualism of the mycorrhizal fungi and the roots of plants and how integral that relationship is. This mutualism can be found everywhere in the digestive bacteria within us and all humans, the mutualism between sea anemones and clownfish, spider crab and algae, ants and fungus, humans and plants, protozoa and termites, the yucca moth and the yucca plant. And an interesting mutualism can also be found in Mozambique with this bird called the greater honey guides that have relationships, can develop relationships with the Yao tribe. Hunters look for beehives, and the bird understands the call of the hunters and leads them to the honey in the forests. And if a honey guide finds its treasure deep in the forest, it flies to the nearby settlement to find its contact and calls for its human partner in a loud chattering call that is different from its usual territorial sounds. And along with this call, they then directly gesture the direction where the beehive is located by flitting from tree to tree until the human followers find the tree where the bee nest resides. All these mutualisms are going on simultaneously all the time. In experiencing this mutualism, one of the sweetest examples for me is a baby gestures to the mother that it's time. The mother responds and the needs of both are met. And in that moment of the needs being met, the whole universe is connected. In social contexts, these relationships are usually defined as hierarchy, pecking order, chain of command, the ranking, the position, the status, the station. Yet all of this is relationship, again. Among folks who collaborate, which happens a lot in this group, and here at Jikoji, the leadership actually shifts throughout the group when we realize that whomever helps advance the process is the leader. The Tenzo is the leader, is designated leader in the meals. Yet the Fukutan, who takes out the compost bucket, advances the process to the next round of preparing. And the dishwasher prepares the setting for the smooth harmony for the next meal. The participants enjoying the meal, the fruits of the Tenzo's and Fukuten's efforts, the farmers, the transporters, the distributors, the grocers, all essential efforts in the process. The understanding the causal chain, we understand that every link is essential. It is in this way of understanding I want to approach hierarchy and the notion of no hierarchy. Confucianism defines hierarchy and also relates it distinctly to virtues that we need to practice. The hierarchy of an emperor and a minister, emperor and his many ministers, in order for the harmony of the community, the country to be sustained requires clear understandings. And those understandings are not in harmony if voices are not heard. So in successful dynasties, an emperor who would have ministers of many points of view could find his way to continue with the harmony of the moment through, and right action results from that. With husband-wife, there's another hierarchical approach. That connection results in the division of labor that is essential for the sustaining of the family. Sometimes shifting and collaborating and even trading responsibilities. The relationship between a father and son or mother and daughter, or mother and son and father and daughter, the filial connection, the affection is a virtue. In recognizing the sibling order, there's a sense of sequence of how things are laid out and where one's position is at that point in time. And when we hold fixed to those positions, the fluidity of actually what's ongoing is difficult to be in harmony. And yet it's important to maintain a sense of the sequence of things. In friendship, the hierarchy in friendship results in trust and fidelity, which fosters deeper connections, for vaster collaborations. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. And this is spoken of in both Shunryu's, Suzuki's Zen mind, beginner's mind, but also in Confucianism. That in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert mind, there are few. This expert mind that we bring can afflict us with an arrogance that is one of the greatest enemies of our development and progression on the path. There's a Tibetan saying that goes, when self-pride is as high as the mountain, the waters of all virtues dissipate. So if one is aware of the extent of one's relationships, that then every moment is an opportunity to practice humility and compassion towards someone or something. Hierarchy makes it clear that when we engage in process, we understand the roles each plays, the interactions on specific occasions, and usually the person in the elevated position, it's helpful when they have a greater degree of benevolence than the person in a lower position. The senior is expected in the Confucian way and in our way to exemplify kind heart and benevolence and all the other virtues in these interactions. And even with hierarchical systems, it is for each of us, it is the virtues we witness by any of the participants that determines who we learn from and follow. And it's not necessarily the external position. In the Jikoji bylaws, it's offered that there are these guiding principles, that all beings are members of the Sangha, that teachers, board members, leaders, and practitioners serve and do not govern, and that the organization has no hierarchy. Ultimately, it is true that there is no hierarchy in the absolute sense. In the relative sense, hierarchies, needs need to be known and understood. And not to understand these relationships results in conflict. These last couple of weeks, I had the privilege of being a householder again, being a grandpa, joining one of my son's families. Well, I have my son he has, it's confusing. How many families do people have sometimes? But I was with his one family, and he has another son with a former partner. But I was able to witness the problems of developing understanding with my 4-year-old grandson, who could be persuasive in his efforts to get his way by inappropriate behaviors, or what we'd consider inappropriate behaviors. And so the challenge as a householder is to, how do you develop these understandings in a young one so that they comply? In the Confucius talks about, people will follow the penal codes, but actually find ways to get around them because they don't want to suffer the consequences, not because it's necessarily good. However, if we're practicing with virtue, and then these models of excellence in behavior are actually watched and followed. So be careful. And I had to be careful, and was probably appropriate a lot of the time and maybe not so some of the time, because he did cry. But what I would do in the morning, he'd wake up and it's like he'd come out and sit on my lap, and I'd cut up some watermelon and make some chunky pieces and put them in a bowl. And if there was one fork in the bowl, he would get down and go get another fork and bring it there and hand me the fork, because he would not start eating until we each took a piece. And I don't know where he learned that, but it just warms the heart when that happens. So every morning, that would be the way, that sharing, that communing, almost breaking, we weren't breaking bread, but we were chewing on watermelon together. It is said by some teachers that enlightenment is nothing other than serving others. And in that gesture of bringing me a fork and serving me a fork so we could both share in this, he's learning about serving others and being helpful. And that's where I think understandings really develop and expand. In a young boy, finding satisfaction in serving another is divine. In an old being, unable to fulfill all self-needs, finding solace and comfort in being served by another is divine. And yet it requires not holding on to station or place. I want to end with this brief poem by Mary Oliver. At Blackwater Pond. At Blackwater Pond, the tossed waters have settled after a night of rain. I dip my cupped hands. I drink a long time. It tastes like stone, leaves, fire. It falls cold into my body, waking the bones. I hear them deep inside me whispering, "Oh, what is that beautiful thing that just happened?" Thank you.
Anyone who would like to have comments or questions, please just go ahead and unmute yourself.